But the Detroit Pistons have just shocked the Los Angeles Lakers. 100-87 to win the NBA title.
There have been crazy NBA champions throughout the years, but none crazier than the 2004 Detroit Pistons. I'm Nick Garcia, and this is After the Fame, After the Game, 2004 Detroit Pistons edition.
All I've ever known.
Now, let's just go on and see how a team with their best player being Ben Wallace can go on and win an NBA championship. The 2004 Detroit Pistons are known to be one of the least talented offensive NBA teams to ever win a championship. However, they were still able to beat many great teams to get to the NBA Finals. It was 2003, and the Detroit Pistons just lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the New Jersey Nets, where the Nets absolutely destroyed the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Series, which wasn't close at all. And the Detroit Pistons knew they had to make a major offseason impact so they can start competing again in the East. They went on to go change their head coach from Rick Carlisle to Larry Brown before the start of the 2003-2004 season. The Pistons went on to have only 6 returning players, such as Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace, Richard Hamilton, Corliss Williamson, Tayshaun Prince, and Mehmet Okersh. Soon they realized they had to rebuild by getting players like Rasheed Wallace and Eldon Campbell. This was also the year they drafted Darko Milicic, which was pretty much just a wasted pick. So really, you wouldn't have expected a rebuilding team like this to play that way. However, they went on to have a pretty good regular season, but they definitely were not the best team in the league, let alone the East. They finished with a 54-28 record, which was pretty good with a team that really didn't have any superstar player. However, many would disagree with me, saying Ben Wallace was their star player. But I would go on and say this really wasn't true. Don't get me wrong, Ben Wallace was an amazing player with many star-like qualities, like defense and rebounding. But outside of defense and rebounding, he wasn't that great of a scorer. Their next best player was probably Chauncey Billups, who was only averaging around 16 points with about 5 assists, which was only amongst top 15 with point guards this season. Rasheed Wallace came in a little late, but he was averaging about 13 points a game, which was fine because his stronghold was defense along with Ben Wallace. And lastly, there was Rip Hamilton, who was putting up the best scoring numbers on the team, which was about 17 points a game, which actually wasn't even top 20 in the NBA at the time. But what the Pistons lacked on offense, they made up on defense. And like I said before, Ben Wallace was an absolute monster on defense. He had about 3 blocks a game with 12 rebounds. Not to mention the team as a whole was averaging around 7 blocks and 8 steals. They were also holding teams under 92 points a game, which was the second best in the league at the time, only behind the San Antonio Spurs. Needless to say, they were a great defensive team, and now they were heading into the playoffs as the 3rd ranked team in the East. And they were definitely not the favorites to come out on top. It was actually the Indiana Pacers, who were supposed to come out of the East and who were probably the better team overall. But however, the Detroit Pistons would go on to play the Milwaukee Bucks first round of the playoffs, which really wasn't that much of a challenge. They would go on to pretty much skip to the second round, beating the Milwaukee Bucks 4-1. However, their very next round wouldn't be so easy. They would go on to face the defending Eastern Conference champions, the New Jersey Nets. Both of these teams would go on to have a hard-fought series, where the Pistons would win the first 2, then the Nets would win Game 3, 4, and 5, just before the Pistons would finally wake up and win the last 2 games to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would go up against the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers would go on and win Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Then 2 and 3 would go to the Pistons, 4 would go to the Pacers, and then the Pistons would end the series by winning Games 5 and 6. The Pistons would finally advance to the NBA Finals, and they would go on to play one of the most talented Lakers team, with Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, and Gary Payton. This was also the same year Kobe would get in trouble for a sexual assault scandal in Denver, and the same year where him and Shaq got in many non-basketball related fights, which would cause many team chemistry issues for the Lakers, on and off the court. Not to mention, they also had 4 superstars on the team, which at the time wasn't working that well. The Pistons would end up beating the Lakers in the finals 4-1, which would actually cause a lot of off-season controversy for the Lakers, but that's a story for another video. Not soon after this finals win from the Detroit Pistons, many people would wonder how a team with no real superstar player could go on and beat a team full of future Hall of Famers. And many, including myself, agree that a team full of all-stars could lose any day to a team with high chemistry and a great defense. And till this day, many still agree that they have never seen an NBA team with no real offensive weapons win an NBA championship. But here's my main theory on how the Detroit Pistons won the championship. Because besides good chemistry and great defense, they also played a Laker team that had many chemistry issues, most of which weren't even basketball related, which may have played a really big role in the Detroit Pistons championship run. But who knows? Maybe that team was actually full of superstars, but we didn't look at it like that, because no one on that team was dropping 30 points a night. But either way, superstar or not, it doesn't matter, because they're always going to be remembered as champions. And that is the 2004 Detroit Pistons story. And who knows, maybe they were one of the worst NBA champions of all time, or maybe they were one of the best. We don't know, but at the end of the day, they're always going to be remembered as winning an NBA championship. I'm Nick Garcia, and this is After the Fame, After the Game, Detroit Pistons edition. And if you do like content like this, then remember to hit that subscribe button. And don't forget, comment down any of your thoughts down below for any future video ideas. I'm Nick Garcia, and this is Pass the Rock.